It started with a casual scroll, just another evening where the TV hummed softly in the background, and the glow of a phone's screen lit up tired eyes. You know that feeling, right? When you're not really looking for anything in particular, but something grabs you. That's exactly what happened to Mark Henderson, a quiet, small-town dad from Oregon who had no idea that one tap on a viral video would flip his entire world upside down. It wasn't the funny content, the music, or even the scenery that stopped him in his tracks. No, it was something, or rather, someone in the background. And within seconds, his heart skipped a beat. There she was, his daughter, missing for 6 years, standing in the crowd like a ghost in plain sight. What was she doing there? Why hadn't she reached out? And most terrifying of all, was she in danger? If you're here right now, it's probably because that headline made your stomach drop. And let me tell you this right away, you're going to get the answer. This isn't one of those stories that drags you along and leaves you empty at the end. No. You will find out what happened, where she was, and why it took a viral video and a desperate father's sharp eyes to finally piece it all together. But to truly understand what this family went through, you need to feel it. You need to live it with them. Because this isn't just about a girl who disappeared. This is about trust. It's about heartbreak. And it's about the kind of love that doesn't give up, even when everyone else already has. Let's talk about something real for a second. As parents, as family, we live with this quiet fear that one day, someone we love might vanish without a trace. It's the kind of anxiety that lives in the background of your mind every time your kid is 5 minutes late coming home. It's a parent's worst nightmare, losing a child and not knowing what happened, not having closure, not knowing whether to grieve or to hope. And if you've ever lost someone or even had a scare, then you already know how deep that panic runs. Mark Henderson lived that nightmare every single day for 6 long years. And just when he was starting to accept the unimaginable, that he might never see his daughter again, he saw her in a random viral video. In the background, smiling, breathing, alive. Now here's where things get even more strange. The video wasn't filmed in their hometown. It wasn't even posted by anyone they knew. It was just another feel-good travel vlog by a popular influencer doing a live stream from a beachside market in California. The camera panned the crowd, catching families, tourists, vendors, and then, like fate intervened, his daughter walked right through the frame. The angle was shaky. The lighting was poor. But a father knows his child. And when Mark zoomed in, froze the video, and stared into that pixelated face, he just knew. That moment changed everything. He didn't call the police right away. He didn't tell his ex-wife or their other 2 kids. He sat there, staring at the screen, knowing his next move could either bring his daughter home or cost him everything. I want you to really imagine this with me. Imagine not hearing your daughter's voice for 6 years, not seeing her laugh, not hearing her footsteps running through the hallway, birthdays missed, holidays spent in silence, every call from an unknown number making your heart race, just in case it's her. And then, boom, a YouTube short changes everything. You're not prepared. You're not even sure it's real. But your gut tells you it is. What do? What can you do? That's what we're diving into today. This isn't a movie. This isn't fiction. This happened. And every twist in this story will shake you. Because it's not just about a missing girl. It's about a family torn apart by grief. About internet sleuths, unexpected clues, and one father who refused to give up, even when the world told him to move on. And that's why I need you to stay with me all the way to the end. Because the ending? It's something you'll be thinking about for a long, long time. Before we move forward, let's get to know the man behind that moment. Mark Henderson isn't the kind of guy you'd expect to end up in a mystery like this. He's quiet, works as a maintenance supervisor at a paper mill, spends his free time hiking, grilling, and fixing things around the house. After his divorce, he focused on his kids, 2 sons still at home, and his daughter, Emily, who had always been the light of his life. Emily was 16 when she disappeared. Smart, kind, loved animals. The kind of girl who left handwritten notes for her teachers and made everyone around her feel seen. And then she was gone. The police did what they could. There were flyers, press conferences, search parties, tips that led nowhere. Some thought she ran away. Others whispered darker theories. But there were no leads, no answers, and worst of all, no closure. Her case went cold. Life went on, at least on the surface. But Mark? He never stopped searching. Quietly. Obsessively. Every night after his sons went to sleep, he would scan missing persons forums, Reddit threads, even Facebook groups with blurry photos and strange sightings. He became his own investigator, clinging to the hope that one day, something, anything, would break the silence. And then it did. Now here's the master move that most people miss. Mark didn't go to the authorities first. He went to the internet. The same way he found the clue. And the way he navigated the dark web of online chatter, facial recognition software, and digital footprints, it's straight out of a thriller. But he did it all with one goal: find Emily without tipping off whoever had her. Because the deeper he dug, the more he realized this wasn't just a case of a runaway teen. There were layers. Secrets. People who didn't want her found. And when you realize who was behind it all, it'll make your blood run cold. So here's where I ask you to lean in. Because everything you're about to hear, from the influencer who unknowingly captured the clue, to the strange symbols Mark discovered in the background of the footage, to the moment he finally came face to face with the truth, is going to challenge what you think you know about online safety, family bonds, and what people are capable of when they think no one's watching. This is a journey into the unknown. And by the end of it, you might just look at the internet and your own family a little differently. And look, I get it. You could be watching anything right now. There are a million distractions online and algorithms pulling you in every direction. But you clicked on this story for a reason. Deep down, part of you wants to believe in something bigger. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you've felt helpless or unheard. Or maybe you just want to see a father win for once. Whatever brought you here, I promise you this: the story you're about to witness is worth it. Because it's not just about one girl. It's about all the stories that don't get told. The families still waiting. The kids still missing. The threads still unraveling. And the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone out there is watching close enough to see what others miss. So, don't go anywhere. What Mark saw when he zoomed in on that video was only the beginning. There were signs hidden in plain sight. Faces that didn't belong. Words scribbled on the wall behind her. A man standing just a little too close. And once he started asking questions, things got dangerous. People started reaching out. Some to help. Others to silence him. And the question that started it all, was she trying to send a message, would soon become a race against time. The moment you've been waiting for is just ahead. But first, I need you to see what Mark saw. Because once you do, you'll understand why this story, this mystery, is far from over. Mark hadn't been sleeping much for the last few months, and it wasn't just because of work or the stress of raising two teenage boys alone. There was something more gnawing at him, a sense that something was off, even before the video. He'd been having strange dreams. Dreams where he heard Emily's voice, faint and distant, calling out from behind a door that never opened. There were nights when he thought he heard footsteps in the hallway, swore he saw a light flicker from her old room, even though it had been boxed up for years. People said that kind of thing was grief, the mind trying to comfort itself with false hope. But Mark wasn't the kind of man to believe in illusions. He believed in evidence, in facts. And in his gut, he knew something wasn't right long before his phone fed him that life-changing clip. He had become reclusive over time, drifting away from old friends, shutting down polite inquiries with nods and half-smiles. The only person who still dropped by regularly was Sarah, his neighbor and one-time friend of his ex-wife. She had always looked out for the kids, especially after the divorce, bringing over leftovers, checking in on school updates, making sure the boys had rides when Mark's shifts ran long. Sarah had lost her own brother when she was young, a military disappearance that was never solved, and maybe that's why she seemed to understand his silence better than most. But even she had no idea that Mark had never stopped looking for Emily. He'd set up Google alerts for her name, kept an encrypted hard drive full of every photo, school project, and journal entry she'd ever written, and even paid a private investigator for nearly a year, though that trail had gone ice cold. It was obsession, maybe. But if your child vanished without a trace, wouldn't you obsess too? The video that changed everything wasn't even supposed to show up in his feed. It was a travel vlog from a popular YouTube influencer named Cody Rivers, someone Mark had never heard of, whose content was usually upbeat, flashy, and filled with beach montages, drone shots, and upbeat background music. But the algorithm had other plans. The video was titled Top 10 Hidden Beach Markets You Need to Visit This Summer and had nothing to do with missing persons or true crime. Mark only clicked out of curiosity, just a momentary escape from another sleepless night. He wasn't even really watching. Not until the camera swept across a crowd during a sunset vendor montage, and something about one of the girls walking by made him sit straight up in his chair. She was older than he remembered, taller, her hair a shade darker and cut shorter. But the way she moved, the nervous glance over her shoulder, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, it hit him like a freight train. He paused the video, replayed it in slow motion, and as the camera drifted left for just 2 seconds, he saw her face. Emily. He zoomed in. The resolution was terrible, the pixels dancing like broken puzzle pieces, but the shape of her jaw, the tilt of her smile, it was her. But what really caught his attention wasn't just her. It was the man walking behind her. Mid-40s, dressed in dark clothes, sunglasses despite the fading light, and a subtle hand motion that, at first, seemed like nothing. But Mark had watched it over and over. The man placed his hand on her shoulder briefly, like a warning. Then she turned and walked away, just before the camera cut to the next scene. Mark had screen captured every frame. He downloaded the video, ran it through image enhancement software, even reached out to the influencer's team pretending to be a fan, asking for any unedited footage of the beach scenes. They replied politely, said most raw files were deleted during editing, thanked him for his support. But Mark wasn't satisfied. He began analyzing every second of the footage he had, noticing small things that others might miss, like the barely visible writing on the wall behind her. 3 letters, scrawled in faded red. YML.
Could have meant anything.
Or it could have been a cry for help. A breadcrumb left behind by a girl trying to be found. And the deeper Mark went, the stranger things became. As he started digging into Cody Rivers' recent uploads, looking for any other clips where Emily might have appeared, he came across a few comments that stood out. Not because they mentioned her, but because they were deleted shortly after posting. Threads in which users claimed to recognize someone in the background. One even wrote, "Pretty sure I saw that girl in Venice Beach last month. She looked scared." But when Mark clicked the thread again the next day, it was gone. Vanished. Just like Emily. Then came the emails. The first one landed 3 days after Mark started quietly asking questions in online forums. It came from an anonymous burner address. No subject line. No greeting. Just a short sentence. Stop looking. No context, no signature. Mark showed it to Sarah, who told him it was probably spam, maybe someone trolling. But a few days later, a second message arrived. This time, it included a link to a private video on an unlisted server, not YouTube. The file took almost a minute to load. What appeared was a shaky recording of the same market from Cody's video, but from a different angle. And there she was again, Emily, only this time, she was looking directly at the camera. Her eyes locked into the lens like she knew someone would be watching. And for a brief second, she mouthed something. Mark spent hours trying to read her lips. He played it back frame by frame, over and over again. And after dozens of attempts, he was sure she said 3 words, "I see you." That's when paranoia set in. Was this a trap? Was someone playing with him? Why would Emily mouth those words? Was it a warning or a signal? Mark began to question everything. Was she really free? Or was she being watched too? And most importantly, was she reaching out to him, or warning him to stay away? As Mark expanded his search, he started finding threads in online forums that hinted at a network, an underground group connected to missing teens who were never found, a digital trail of rumors, lost footage, and people who claimed to have seen things but were too afraid to talk. Some called it urban legend, a YouTube conspiracy theory that blended truth and fiction. But Mark didn't care about theories. He only cared about one girl. His girl. He started contacting others whose children had vanished under similar circumstances. Some responded, most didn't. But a woman named Dana in Arizona replied. Her daughter, Jess, had disappeared 5 years ago after visiting a music festival with friends. A few weeks back, she had also received a private message containing a photo. It was blurry, distant, but Dana was convinced her daughter was in the crowd of a TikTok dance challenge video that had gone viral. When Dana tried to contact the account owner, the entire page was deleted the next day. And then came the email, just like Mark's. Stop looking. Mark and Dana began working together in secret, comparing notes, timestamps, metadata. They started noticing patterns, locations where viral videos were shot, the timing of when certain teens went missing, even the presence of the same man in the background of multiple clips, always slightly out of focus. Same sunglasses. Same walk. Always close, but never noticed by the camera subject. They dubbed him the Ghost. Mark printed out a still of him from the market video and pinned it to the wall behind his desk. He stared at it every night, wondering who he was, how he was involved, and whether finding him would bring him to Emily or cost him everything. And just as the pieces began to take shape, something unexpected happened. Mark's computer was hacked. It started with strange pop-ups, files disappearing, programs crashing. Then his hard drive, a decade's worth of photos, notes, and leads, was wiped clean. He rushed it to a data recovery specialist, only to be told the drive was corrupted beyond repair. Someone didn't just want him to stop looking. They wanted to erase everything he knew. That's when Mark knew this wasn't just about his daughter. This was bigger. Someone out there was watching, waiting, and now they were warning him. But Mark didn't stop. He couldn't, because in the shadows of 1,000 videos, on servers most people never think about, in forums that vanish without warning, something dark was hiding. And it was connected to his daughter. The question now wasn't just who took her, but why. And that brings us right up to the moment when Mark received a package on his doorstep with no return address. Inside was a phone, preloaded, with only one video. And what it showed would change everything. Mark held the burner phone in his trembling hands, staring at the dim screen like it was a live grenade. It had no brand label, no lock screen, no SIM card, just a video file titled Look_Now. He debated for hours before pressing play, waiting until the house was silent and the boys were asleep. His desk lamp was the only light in the room, casting long shadows against the wall filled with notes, maps, and faded photos of Emily. As the video began, Mark recognized the same beach market setting from before, but this time, the footage was closer, sharper, like someone had filmed it specifically for him. Emily was there again. She looked tired,
Pale.
older than her age, and with something in her eyes that didn't belong to a 17-year-old girl. She was seated at a plastic table outside a food stall, glancing nervously at the man across from her. The same man from the first video, the Ghost. The audio was distorted by crowd noise and wind, but something strange happened about 20 seconds in. Emily looked straight into the camera, again, as if she knew it was meant for someone watching. Her lips moved. No one else seemed to notice her. And then the footage cut abruptly to black. A few seconds later, words appeared in blocky red text. "She's not who you think she is." Mark leaned back in his chair, stunned. What did that mean? Was she pretending? Was she in on it? Or was someone trying to twist his mind, to make him second-guess what he knew? Here he played the clip, watching every frame with growing confusion. One thing stood out this time, an emblem stitched onto the sleeve of the Ghost's jacket. It looked like a faded triangle with a serpent wrapped around a sword. A strange symbol, and one Mark had definitely seen before, but couldn't place. Determined to decode it, Mark posted the symbol in a few niche online communities. It didn't take long before someone replied, an ex-military user who claimed the emblem looked eerily similar to an insignia used by a now-defunct private security firm called Black Viper Solutions. They'd operated covertly for years, often in offshore territories, handling special extraction and relocation missions. Officially, they'd gone under after a whistleblower scandal involving human trafficking accusations, but no one had ever been charged. Most records were sealed or scrubbed entirely. Mark's heart raced. Could this group have taken Emily? Was she being held under their protection or their control? He shared the discovery with Dana, who grew quiet over the phone. Then, hesitantly, she admitted something she hadn't shared before. About a year after her daughter vanished, she received a letter. No return address. No signature. Inside was a single page with only 2 lines typed in the center. She's safe. But don't follow. Dana had chalked it up to a cruel prank. But now, she wasn't so sure. Especially because when she went looking for the physical letter last night to show Mark, it was gone. Along with every note she had ever taken about Jess. Her backup drive?
Fried.
Paper files? Missing from her locked filing cabinet. It was like someone had slipped in, taken only what they needed, and vanished without a trace. Mark's paranoia deepened. Every sound in the house made him jump. He started checking the locks twice, setting up cameras inside and outside. He even stopped sending his boys to school for a few days, afraid they might be used as leverage. But what truly broke him was discovering that someone had been inside his home. He found it by accident. Emily's old journal, the one he had locked in a fireproof safe in the garage, had been moved. The pages were still there, but something about the handwriting in the last entry felt wrong. It was her writing, but the words weren't hers. The entry read, "Dad, stop searching. It's not safe. Let me go." Mark knew Emily would never write that. She was a fighter. Independent. She once stood up to a teacher who tried to fail her for a group project gone wrong. She wouldn't tell him to give up, not unless someone made her. And that's when the betrayal came. Sarah, his kind, helpful neighbor who'd been with him through it all, suddenly grew distant. She stopped visiting. Stopped answering texts. One day, Mark caught her outside in the driveway, hurriedly closing her trunk when she saw him. He asked her point-blank if something was wrong. She said everything was fine, but her eyes darted to the street, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. Later that night, Mark checked his indoor security camera footage and saw something chilling. 2 nights earlier, while the family slept, the garage door had opened. Someone had walked in. A person with a slender build, wearing a hoodie and gloves, and they had the spare garage code. It wasn't a stranger, it was Sarah. He couldn't confront her outright. Not yet. Not without proof. But the betrayal cut deep. Why would she do this? Was she involved the whole time? Was she protecting someone or being forced to act? Mark scoured their past conversations, trying to remember if she'd ever mentioned Emily in a strange way, or slipped up, or acted nervous when certain topics came up. Suddenly, little moments stood out. How she always changed the subject when Mark brought up the private investigator. How she once said, "Sometimes kids disappear for a reason," and brushed it off like it was just a thoughtless remark. But now, he couldn't unhear it. And then came the twist. That same night, a new package arrived at Mark's front door. No postage. No label. Just a brown envelope sealed with tape. Inside was a photograph, blurry, obviously taken in motion, but unmistakable. It was Emily, sitting on a bench at what looked like a bus station, wearing a scarf Mark remembered buying her 2 Christmases ago. She was alone. She looked up at someone just out of frame. But the reflection in the glass behind her showed it clearly. Sarah, standing a few feet away, watching her. Mark's blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't overprotection. This was surveillance. Which begged the question, how long had Sarah been watching Emily? And what exactly was she hiding? Just as Mark was processing this revelation, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new message. It read, "If you love her, stop now. You have 72 hours. But love doesn't stop. Especially when the truth is this close. It was well past midnight when Dana's phone rang, a sharp, jarring tone that broke the silence like a scream. She jolted upright in bed, disoriented at first, then gripped by a sudden dread that twisted in her gut. Her first instinct was that something had happened to Mark, but when she answered, there was no voice. Only a low humming, like static crossed with whispering, too faint to make out but too eerie to ignore. Then came the same voice that had messaged Mark, robotic and scrambled, almost hollow. You were warned. This is your final notice. Emily belongs to us." The line went dead before Dana could say a word. For a few seconds, she sat frozen in place, staring at the dark screen, her breath shallow and quick, her fingers trembling as she clutched the phone like it might burn her hand. She hadn't told anyone about her past with Emily's biological father, hadn't even told Mark the full story, but she was starting to think that omission might have come back to haunt them both. Back in the late 90s, Dana had briefly been involved with a man who went by many names, but one that stuck was Caleb Voss, a former defense contractor who allegedly went rogue and disappeared after testifying against the very company he helped build. He was brilliant, magnetic, dangerous in a way that didn't always show on the surface. When she got pregnant, he offered money to disappear. She refused. After that, he vanished. No contact. No support. No warning. Just one haunting message a few months after Jess was born. "She is my blood." That makes her valuable. Dana dismissed it as the ravings of a narcissist trying to scare her. But now, watching the pieces fall into place around Mark's unraveling nightmare, she began to wonder if her daughter had somehow ended up on someone's radar because of who her father was. As if that revelation wasn't enough, a new problem exploded out of nowhere. The video Mark had received, the one from the burner phone, somehow leaked online. A user on a Reddit conspiracy forum posted a blurry screen grab, asking if anyone could identify the girl in the shot. Within hours, the post had gone viral. People started speculating wildly. Some claimed she was part of a cult. Others believed it was AI-generated deepfake footage planted to manipulate public perception. The tag, #MissingGirlInBackground, trended overnight. At first, Mark was furious. He didn't know how the footage got out, and worse, the public attention now threatened to force the hand of whoever was watching. But then, something bizarre happened. Someone claiming to be from the Department of Homeland Security reached out. Not by phone, not in person, but through a handwritten letter slipped under his windshield wiper. It read, "She's not a victim. Stop interfering. You're jeopardizing an active operation." That message shattered any illusion of certainty Mark had. If DHS was truly involved, it meant there was either a covert operation underway, or someone was pretending to be them to manipulate him. But how could Emily not be a victim? What kind of operation used teenage girls as pawns? And what about the cryptic message, "She's not who you think she is"? Mark began to question whether Emily's disappearance was random at all. What if she had learned something dangerous, that someone needed to bury? Meanwhile, another player stepped into the chaos. A man named Julian Knox, a former private investigator turned independent journalist, reached out to Dana anonymously through a secure chat app. He claimed to have been looking into disappearances connected to Black Viper Solutions for years. He tracked 18 cases across 3 countries that all had one thing in common. Each involved a young woman with some familial tie to a military contractor, biotech firm, or intelligence operative. All had vanished. All had been declared runaways. And in each case, the families received anonymous warnings to stop searching. Knox didn't trust the authorities. He didn't trust tech companies. He claimed the truth was buried beneath layers of private security firms operating in legal gray zones, laundering identities, and erasing records. He offered to meet, but warned that doing so might bring more heat than answers. Dana didn't know whether to trust him, but she agreed to forward the offer to Mark. As Mark drove to the meet location, a rundown diner 2 towns over, chosen last minute and off the grid, he noticed a dark SUV trailing him from a few blocks back. He tried losing it with a series of quick turns through side streets. At one point, he stopped and killed the lights, waiting in total silence. The SUV slowed near the intersection, paused, then drove off. It could have been nothing. But nothing felt like something now. At the diner, Julian Knox was exactly the kind of man you didn't want to trust, but somehow couldn't ignore. He looked half unhinged, eyes darting, voice low, hands always near his bag like he was ready to bolt. Still, his intel was sharp. He handed Mark a flash drive with archived footage, travelogues, and emails allegedly taken from an old BVS server dump, one that mentioned a program called Project Echo. It listed subjects by number, not name, but cross-referencing dates and locations. One entry stood out. Subject E, 227, female, approximate age 17. Genetic markers, confirmed. Current location, Tier 3 hold. Status, asset pending reassignment. The timestamp was recent, and it matched the date of the first beach video. Mark wanted to ask more, but Knox stood abruptly. "You didn't hear this from me," he muttered. "They're watching you. Not just her. All of you. She might not be your only connection to this." Then he walked out, disappearing into the night like a ghost. Mark returned home dazed, heart pounding, 1,000 theories crashing in his mind at once. Just as he pulled into the driveway, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Chalk on the sidewalk, written by his youngest son earlier that day, now smeared with boot prints. Next to it, scrawled in fresh red paint, were 4 words. "This is your warning." The story was no longer about finding Emily. It was about uncovering a secret someone was willing to destroy lives to keep buried. But what if she wasn't the only one caught in the web? What if Mark wasn't just chasing a missing girl, but stumbling into the center of something far darker? The night air felt heavier than usual as Mark stood alone in his driveway, staring at the red paint on the pavement. It wasn't just a threat, it was a promise, brazen and cold. It said, "We're watching and we're close." Every instinct in his body screamed to go inside and lock the doors, but part of him knew there would be no safety behind walls. He'd already seen what these people were capable of: surveillance without detection, messages that vanished into thin air, even getting inside his personal devices without leaving a trace. Now they were crossing into his physical world.
This wasn't just cyberspying.
This was a message with boots on the ground. Real people. Real danger. And the cruelest part? His other kids were still in the house, fast asleep. Oblivious. Vulnerable. That realization hit him like a gut punch. He didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like someone breaking in. Every car passing on the street made his pulse spike. Even the wind felt suspicious. By morning, he hadn't shut his eyes once. He spent those long hours pacing the house, checking locks, watching the windows, and replaying Julian Knox's words over and over. She might not be your only connection to this. What did that even mean? Had he unknowingly walked into a decades-old conspiracy? Was Emily's disappearance just the surface of something buried so deep that anyone who touched it got erased? The next blow came fast and without warning. Around noon the next day, Mark called Dana, but her phone went straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her. She never turned off her phone, not even at work. A sick chill crept up his spine. He tried again. Then again. Still nothing. He called her work, and that's when the panic fully set in. The receptionist sounded confused. "She didn't come in today. We thought maybe she was with you. She never called to say she wouldn't be here." It didn't make sense. Dana was reliable. Methodical. She never missed a shift without telling someone. Mark hung up and tried her sister. Then her closest friend. No one had heard from her. It was like she'd vanished into thin air. The search for Emily had already fractured his sense of normalcy. But now, with Dana missing too, that fracture became a total collapse. He drove to her apartment and found the door unlocked. Her purse was still there, along with her phone, which was on the charger, screen dark and lifeless. Her keys were sitting in the bowl by the door. Everything looked untouched, but Mark could feel it in the air. Something was off. There was no forced entry, no signs of struggle, just absence. He checked the security camera she'd installed last year for safety. The app loaded, but the footage was gone. Every single clip from the past 48 hours had been wiped clean. Not just deleted, wiped. As if the system had never recorded anything at all. Now he was truly alone. 2 people missing. 1 daughter caught in a viral video that shouldn't exist. And a warning on his driveway that made it crystal clear: stop digging or face the consequences. His paranoia spiraled into survival mode. He pulled his kids out of school under the guise of a family emergency, took them to a cabin 2 hours north that no one else knew about. He paid cash. Used a burner phone. turned off all his devices, and kept the car parked in the woods behind the property. But even there, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once, while walking the wooded trail behind the cabin, he spotted a small drone hovering silently above the trees. It vanished before he could even lift a rock to throw. Still, it was enough to confirm what he feared. There was nowhere left to hide. That night, he sat in front of the fireplace, staring into the flames while his youngest slept on the couch nearby. He thought about every decision that had led to this. The viral video, the voice on the phone, the flash drive from Knox, the chalk message, the paint, Dana's silence. It all added up to one terrifying conclusion. Someone out there wanted him to stop chasing Emily because finding her might expose something huge. But what was it? Government secrets? Corporate testing? Human trafficking? Biological experiments? Nothing seemed too far-fetched anymore. And the worst part was, he couldn't tell who the enemy was. The deeper he went, the more the truth seemed to shift like sand under his feet. The next morning, something even more chilling arrived. An unmarked envelope slid under the cabin door. No postage, no return address, just one printed photo inside. It was Emily, or at least it looked like her. But she wasn't wearing the same clothes from the beach video. This time, she was seated in what looked like a sterile room. Plain white walls, a metal table, no windows. Her expression was blank, her eyes distant, as if drugged or hypnotized. On the back of the photo was another message, written in block letters with a red Sharpie. "You think she wants to come back?" That question hit Mark harder than any threat. Because now it wasn't just about where she was, it was about why she hadn't tried to contact him. What if she wasn't being held? What if she was staying away by choice? The idea tormented him. What if the Emily he was looking for wasn't the same girl anymore? What if whatever she'd seen, whatever they'd done to her, had changed her so much she no longer saw him as her father? Questions kept piling up, each one heavier than the last. Who sent the envelope? Why were they toying with him? Was this all a game or a warning? And most importantly, what did they want from him? The mystery was no longer just a tangled thread. It was a noose tightening around everyone he loved. Mark had spent the last 3 days in the cabin living in a state of controlled chaos. Every hour, he reviewed the photo of Emily over and over again, searching for something, anything, that could tell him where she was or what she was trying to say. Her eyes looked vacant, but there was something in the background of that image that began to nag at him. A faint reflection in the polished metal table, barely visible, but there. At first, it looked like nothing more than a shadow or smudge, but with enough light and the right angle, he could just barely make out a shape. A symbol. It was circular, with 3 vertical lines running through it. He didn't recognize it, but it sparked something deep in his memory, an image he'd seen years ago but never paid attention to. He began digging through old documents, files he hadn't touched since his days working corporate security for an AI defense contractor. Back then, it was just a job. Now, he wasn't so sure. He scanned files he shouldn't have kept, encryptions buried so deep he almost forgot how to access them. Then he found it, a security breach report from almost a decade ago involving unauthorized experiments linked to psychological behavior modeling. The name of the program was Project Halcyon. It had been classified and quickly buried after whistleblowers started to vanish. Mark remembered rumors at the time about teenagers being used as passive participants through social apps and immersive VR platforms without ever being told they were test subjects. It was unethical and dangerous. But it was also lucrative, funded by private defense firms with ties to the government. One of the design consultants listed on the document caught his eye, Dana Holloway. His heart dropped. He stared at the name for a long time, hoping it was just a coincidence, some other Dana Holloway with the same spelling. But when he opened the employee profile, the photo confirmed it. It was her. His closest friend, his partner in the search, had once worked directly with the people behind this nightmare. The betrayal hit hard, and the implications hit harder. He thought she had vanished because she got too close. Now, he wasn't sure if she had vanished at all, or if she had gone dark on purpose. Suddenly, all the things that hadn't added up before started making a terrifying kind of sense. Dana was the one who insisted he keep everything offline. Dana was the one who suggested Knox. Dana had always seemed one step ahead, too quick to calm him down, too quick to explain away inconsistencies. And she had access to Emily years before the disappearance, during the time she worked on digital behavioral interfaces, tools that mirrored cognitive patterns for training AI. The same age group, the same parameters. Mark didn't want to believe it, but the evidence kept building like a landslide. A flashback hit him like a freight train, a conversation with Dana 6 months before Emily vanished. She had been distant that night, sipping wine slowly, avoiding eye contact as she brought up the topic of memory manipulation in children. At the time, it felt like academic curiosity. Now it sounded like a veiled confession. Desperate for clarity, Mark broke protocol and used a different burner to call the only other person who might know something, Julian Knox. But when the line connected, it wasn't Knox who answered. It was a woman's voice.
Calm. Steady.
You weren't supposed to find that document, she said. But now that you have, you deserve to know the truth. Mark froze. Who is this? I worked with Dana, she said. And you need to understand, Project Halcyon wasn't about mind control. It was about harvesting cognition, mapping thought patterns, testing psychological endurance under artificial stress loops. Emily was flagged as a high-response subject. Her cognitive feedback broke the model. The room spun. Broke the model? What does that mean? It means she didn't just survive it, she evolved inside it. She built her own feedback loop and turned it against them. But that made her dangerous. And if she's reaching out to you now, it's not because she needs saving. It's because she's warning you. Mark could barely breathe. Warning me about what? But the line went dead. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, Mark realized he might not be trying to rescue his daughter from a system. He might be trying to survive something she had become a part of. Maybe even the architect of. Was she lost, or had she found something darker? Something bigger than both of them? The viral video wasn't a breadcrumb. It was a signal. And maybe she didn't want to come back, because she had something else planned. Mark sat in the cold silence of his cabin, the receiver still pressed against his ear long after the line had gone dead. His chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked breaths as the weight of what he'd just heard threatened to collapse him. For the first time since this nightmare began, he wasn't sure who he was fighting against, or what. Every instinct told him to keep going, to pull the threads and unravel the truth no matter where it led. But there was something deeper now, an ache in his gut that whispered a horrifying possibility. What if the girl he was searching for wasn't the same daughter he lost 6 years ago? What if Emily had been changed, reshaped into something new, something dangerous? He didn't want to believe it. He couldn't. But the way her eyes stared blankly in the video, the odd angle of her posture, the eerie symmetry of her movement, it all pointed to something unnatural. He thought she was lost. Maybe she had been, and maybe someone or something brought her back a different way. He grabbed the encrypted USB drive from his bag and plugged it into his offline laptop. There was one last file he hadn't opened. A data cluster Dana had sent him right before she disappeared. He hadn't trusted it then, but now he had no choice. As it loaded, his screen flickered, then dozens of documents and video fragments poured across the interface, layered and corrupted, but still legible. He began scanning them with a growing sense of dread. Psychological reports, behavior models, test simulations. One name appeared over and over again. Subject E7. That's when his blood ran cold. Emily. She had been part of it all along. Not by accident. Not by kidnapping. She had been selected. Groomed. Conditioned. Dana hadn't been trying to help him find her. She had been trying to manage him, to keep him from discovering just how deep this went. And that's when the knock came at the door. Mark froze. No one knew where he was. No one should have been able to trace him. He pulled his Glock from the drawer and moved to the edge of the frame, peeking cautiously through the curtains. A woman stood there. Not armed, not moving aggressively. But something in her stance, relaxed, too calm, made his hair stand on end. Against every instinct, he opened the door a crack. Who are you? I'm someone who used to care about Emily. Before she changed. the woman said. And if you don't want to lose yourself too, you need to stop looking.
Right now.
Mark tightened his grip on the door. Why should I believe anything you say? Because the people running Halcyon aren't in control anymore, she said. She is. His voice caught in his throat. Emily. She broke their system, the woman continued. Turned it inside out. She's still inside it, but she's running it now. Every message you've received, every clue you think you've found, she sent them. And she's watching. Mark slammed the door shut, bolting it and backing away like he'd just touched fire. This was impossible. His daughter wasn't some kind of digital puppet master. She was a teenager, a girl with a laugh that lit up a room, with dreams of becoming a marine biologist who loved riding her bike at dusk. She wasn't capable of this. But then he saw the laptop screen flicker again. A new window opened, on its own. And there she was, Emily, sitting in a chair, staring into the camera. No sound, just a smile. Not vacant, not cold, but knowing, calculated. And then came the message, you have one choice. Walk away now, and I'll let you remember me, as I was. Keep going, and I'll show you what I've become. Mark's hands trembled. It was her. It sounded like her. But it wasn't the voice of a scared girl pleading to be rescued. It was a challenge, a test. And he had no idea what the right answer was. Outside, the woman had vanished. Inside, Mark faced the most impossible choice of his life. Let go of the daughter he loved in order to preserve her memory, or dive deeper into a truth that could destroy every last piece of the past he was trying so desperately to reclaim. If he pushed forward, there was no turning back. But if he stopped now, if he let go, he would always wonder, always fear, always live with the haunting question of whether he had left her behind or escaped something far worse. And just as he reached to close the laptop, another message appeared, this time in code. He decoded it instantly. Knox is alive. But not for long, the clock had just started ticking again. Mark had no time to process the horror unraveling in front of him. The second he decoded the message about Knox still being alive, something deep inside him snapped back into motion, a surge of desperate adrenaline fueled by grief, guilt, and a sliver of impossible hope. For 6 years, Knox had been the last name on the list of trusted allies. The man who'd stood beside him in combat, who knew what Emily meant to Mark before and after the disappearance. The idea that Knox was still alive and in danger meant two things. Someone had lied to him for years, and this entire thing was far bigger than any missing persons case. Mark loaded his bag, tossed his laptop in the passenger seat, and sped down the mountain road into the city with one mission in mind: find Knox and find out what he knew. But deep down, he sensed something had already shifted. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was preparing to reveal itself, like a creature waiting in the dark to pounce. The coordinates embedded in the code led to a deserted industrial district on the edge of town, an abandoned textile plant surrounded by rusted fencing and rows of overgrown brush. The place reeked of setups and ambushes, but Mark didn't care. If Knox was inside, he'd get him out or die trying. As he pushed through the rotting front entrance, he found a trail of heat signatures on his thermal scope. 2 figures. One slumped against a column, the other pacing nearby. Mark crept closer and saw him, Knox. Alive but bloodied. Barely conscious. Before Mark could make a move, the second figure turned around, and that's when everything shattered. It was Dana. Not dead. Not missing. Standing there in full tactical gear, whispering something into an earpiece. She looked right at him, no shock in her eyes. Only resignation. I warned you not to keep digging, she said. You think this is about your daughter? Mark, she was just the first.
They're all connected now.
Halcyon was never about saving anyone. It was about control. Mark's head swam. You lied to me. You pretended to help. Why? Dana stepped aside, revealing a row of monitors behind her. Dozens of faces blinked across the screens, teenagers, young adults, all with dead expressions and coded tags beside their names. Subject IDs. Emily's was there. So was Knox's. And then Mark saw something that froze his blood. His own name. His face. Labeled, Subject 0, Phase Complete. You were the control, Dana said, almost with pity. We had to see what grief would do when we fed you just enough hope to keep moving. You weren't tracking the system. The system was tracking you. The room began to spin. Mark stumbled backward, trying to process the sickening weight of it. All the surveillance, the clues, the so-called allies, it had all been part of an experiment. A psychological maze designed to see how far a man would go to find someone he loved, even if it meant unraveling his mind piece by piece. They'd built the illusion of a mystery around him, let him dig his own grave with every step forward. Knox groaned from the ground, trying to speak. Don't listen to her. It's worse. She's not in charge. She's just a handler. The real power's underground. They call it the core. Emily's the only one who broke through. She wasn't supposed to. Dana raised her weapon, but Mark reacted faster, disarming her and pinning her to the floor. Where is it? He demanded. Where's the core? She spat blood and gave him a crooked smile. It's not a place. It's a choice. And you just made it. Suddenly, the building lights cut out. Everything plunged into darkness. The monitors flickered. Then a voice came over the intercom. Emily's voice. Not scared. Not angry.
Just calm.
Dad, it's time. You're close now. But if you come any further, you'll see what they did to me. Are you ready for that? The monitors flashed again. A live feed lit up showing another person, Sarah, Mark's ex-wife, strapped to a chair in an undisclosed room, looking weak, scared, and barely conscious. Mark's heart twisted. He hadn't even known she was part of this. He'd assumed she'd left to grieve in her own way. But now, watching her tremble on that screen, he realized how deeply the rot had spread. No one had been spared. Everyone close to him was a pawn. And every memory he thought was real was now tainted by the possibility of manipulation. He looked down at Dana, who was quietly pressing a small remote in her vest. Behind him, a secondary wall began to retract, revealing a steel chamber humming with mechanical life. Inside were memory modules, each labeled by subject. Emily's core module glowed faintly red. And next to it, Mark's. Already active. That's when Knox screamed, "Don't let them finish the sync. If they merge your module with hers, you'll never know where she ends and you begin. They'll make you believe she wanted this." Mark stood frozen between three impossible decisions: free Knox and Sarah, destroy the memory cores, or use them to finally understand what happened inside Emily's mind. Time was slipping away. The truth was burning closer. But he could feel it. He wasn't just fighting for his daughter anymore. He was fighting to survive the truth. Mark stood paralyzed in front of the glowing core chamber, his chest rising and falling in unsteady bursts as the weight of every truth he'd uncovered pressed into him like the walls were closing in. He could hear Knox's raspy breathing behind him, Sarah's barely audible sobs filtering through the live monitor, and Dana still cuffed to the floor behind a pile of broken equipment, whispering something under her breath, repeating a sequence of numbers like a prayer or a countdown. The red light pulsing from Emily's memory core grew brighter with every passing second, as if the machine itself were waiting for Mark to make a decision. For a long time, all he could do was stare at his own name etched on the module beside hers, knowing now it hadn't been an accident that brought him here. He'd been groomed for this moment.
Trained. Tracked. Used.
Everything he thought he was chasing, his daughter, the clues, the truth, had been leading him to a predetermined end. But what the people behind us didn't count on was that Mark still had one thing left they couldn't program, predict, or replicate: free will. With trembling hands, he stepped forward and removed Emily's module from its harness. The entire system blared a warning as the chamber shuddered. Dana's muttering turned into shouts, screaming at him to stop, but he ignored her. He slid the module into the adjacent port beside his own. If this was about syncing memories, then he needed to see what she saw. Not through data. Through her eyes. The room was instantly swallowed in blinding white light, and suddenly, Mark wasn't standing in the lab anymore. He was standing on a beach. Not just any beach, that beach. The last place he'd seen Emily before she vanished. The bonfire flickered nearby, and silhouettes of laughing teens danced in the dark as music thumped from a Bluetooth speaker half buried in the sand. Mark could see Emily, her face lit by firelight, her voice clear and real for the first time in 6 years. She wasn't scared. She wasn't sad. She was recording something on her phone, laughing at a joke, texting someone. Then it changed. The music stopped. The screen went black. And out of the corner of her eye, a figure stepped out of the dunes. A man. Tall. Familiar. It was Knox. Only not the Knox Mark knew. This version was younger, clean-shaven, and wearing something strange. A pin on his jacket shaped like the Halcyon logo. Emily didn't recognize him at first. But when he whispered something in her ear, she froze. He handed her a phone and pointed toward the highway. She nodded, wiped a tear from her cheek, and walked straight into the dark. No one stopped her. No one noticed. The bonfire raged behind her, but she never turned back. Mark screamed her name as he chased after her through the vision, but it was no use. The memory kept playing, on a loop, over and over. Then everything shattered into fragments, and he was back in the lab, gasping for air. The modules had synced. He'd seen what they wanted her to see, what they made her remember. But he also saw something else, an overlay error. A single frame that didn't belong to the beach memory. He rewound it.
Paused. Zoomed in.
It was a hospital room. Emily was strapped to a gurney, eyes darting wildly, and above her was Dana, older, colder, and speaking with someone just out of frame. Mark enhanced the audio. The voice was male. Calculated.
Quiet.
It said, "She's fighting the imprinting harder than expected. We may need to move to Subject 0 sooner than planned." Dana had nodded. Then sync the father's grief pattern to her memory loop. Let him chase ghosts. We'll use the girl for phase 2. Mark stumbled backward. That was the moment. The real one. They hadn't taken Emily to break her. They'd taken her to use her as the bait, the blueprint, and the battery for whatever this program was. And Mark? He was the emotional power source. Every choice, every lead, every confrontation was designed to draw out his fight, his instincts, his love, for them to capture and learn from. He had to stop the system. He turned toward the central processor and yanked open the control panel, bypassing the lockouts with the code he'd stolen from Dana earlier. The system howled in resistance, red lights spinning, alarms blaring, warning him that a total memory purge would not only destroy the facility, but wipe all active modules, including Emily's. That's when the ultimate choice hit him like a truck. He could save her data, what was left of her consciousness, her thoughts, her essence locked in digital purgatory, or he could destroy the entire operation, save Sarah, free Knox, and prevent the technology from ever being used again. But Emily would vanish with it. Then, a soft voice echoed behind him. "Dad, it's okay. I'm not gone. I never was." He turned. Emily stood there. Not a memory. Not a ghost.
Real.
She held up a drive, the original core, the one the lab had tried to fake. She must have escaped before they completed the overwrite. Her eyes shimmered with tears as she stepped toward him. "They wanted to replace me. But I hid the real data. I've been watching you the whole time, waiting for you to find me. I couldn't call you. I couldn't risk them tracing me. But now it's over. We can go." Before Mark could speak, a final gunshot rang out behind them. Dana had broken free. The bullet struck Emily in the shoulder as Mark lunged toward her. He tackled Dana, finally ending it, but the damage was done. Emily crumpled in his arms, whispering, "Don't let them turn anyone else into what they tried to make me." Mark inserted the drive into the system, uploaded the real Emily, and launched the purge. The facility shook violently as the core began to melt down. He carried Emily out through a back corridor as fire consumed the heart of the program. He found Sarah and Knox along the way, barely making it outside, as the building imploded. They watched it burn. And just when you think the nightmare is over, a dark SUV parked far from the flames lights up. Inside it, someone watches the scene unfold on a secure monitor, wearing the same insignia Mark saw in that memory. The screen cuts to static. and then loads a new file. Subject 01 activated. Awaiting instructions. Months had passed since the night the lab burned to the ground, and the world around Mark had, in a sense, returned to normal. Emily was home. Sarah had moved in with them, her trauma still raw but slowly healing as she learned how to trust again. Knox, the unlikely ally who had saved them more than once, had disappeared into the shadows, leaving only a cryptic note that said, "Some wars are better fought from a distance." There was peace of a sort. Mark had finally taken the time to go through the motions of rebuilding his life, though it felt like a struggle to return to something that had been lost long ago. In the quiet moments when he allowed himself to reflect, though, a lingering unease gnawed at him. Emily was different now, but it wasn't just the physical scars of her captivity. She was quieter, more distant, like someone who had spent too long in a world that wasn't meant for them. The memory of the night they reconnected, the moment when he had pulled her from the grip of that terrifying machine, still haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't saved her in time, that the person she had been before everything began, before the manipulation and the experiments, was forever gone. She was here, physically, but the Emily he had known was locked away in some inaccessible corner of her mind. Yet every time she smiled at him, or when she spoke of the future, there was a flicker of the girl he had once known, and that flicker was enough to keep him fighting. But even with the peace they'd found, there was still one thing Mark couldn't let go. The file. The one that had been uploaded before the building collapsed. The one with the haunting message about Subject 01. The implications were chilling. Someone, somewhere, was still using the technology they'd left behind, and the thought that their nightmare could resurface at any moment kept him up at night. He tried to brush it off. He tried to focus on what mattered, his family, his daughter, and their healing. But deep down, he knew that this wasn't over. Not yet. He sat in the living room one night, Emily curled up beside him, and he stared at the flickering flames in the fireplace. The sound of Sarah's laughter echoed from the kitchen, a sharp contrast to the thoughts swirling in his mind. He was tired of waiting for a storm that never seemed to come, but a part of him was always looking over his shoulder. He had always prided himself on being a man of action, on being the protector, the one who made sure things didn't spiral out of control. But now, he felt helpless in the face of something much larger than him, much larger than any of them. Then, just as the night seemed to calm, his phone buzzed. A single message. "We know what you did. We're coming for you." Mark's heart skipped a beat, and the ground beneath him seemed to tilt. The message had no sender, just a number, an encrypted line. He stared at it, the weight of it settling over him like a dark cloud. His hands were shaking. Was it a threat? A warning? Or something else entirely? Could this be connected to the file, the warning he had received all those months ago? The reality he had been trying to bury was pulling him back into its grasp. And in that moment, Mark realized something he hadn't fully admitted to himself. This wasn't just about saving Emily. It was about something much bigger. It was about them. The ones behind everything. The ones who had been watching, waiting. They weren't done. Before he could process the message fully, the doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, echoing through the quiet house. His pulse quickened. Who could it be at this hour? He stood up, moving cautiously toward the door, trying to steady his breathing, trying to ignore the icy grip of fear clutching at his chest. Opening the door, he found a package waiting for him. No return address. No name. Just a simple brown box with a note attached. Mark ripped open the envelope, his heart pounding as his eyes scanned the words. "You have no idea how far this goes. The next phase begins." Mark stared at the note, dread filling his gut. Was this it? The beginning of the end, or just another twisted game? He wanted to burn the note, throw the box out, pretend none of this had ever happened. But he couldn't. He couldn't erase the truth. Not now. Not when he had come so far. Behind him, Emily appeared in the doorway, looking at the package with wide, confused eyes. "Dad? What is it? What's wrong?" He turned toward her, the weight of everything crashing down on him in that single moment. What if he hadn't been enough to protect her? What if everything they had fought for was still slipping through his fingers? And yet, looking into her eyes, the same spark that had once been there in the little girl who laughed and played in the backyard, the same love that had held them together in the darkest moments, he realized one thing. He couldn't stop now. He couldn't let this go. The war wasn't over. But he wasn't going to fight it alone anymore. The camera zoomed out, leaving Mark and Emily standing in the doorway, the weight of the world on their shoulders, but an unspoken promise between them, a promise to fight. And as the screen faded to black, the final message appeared. The story is not over. You've only just begun to understand.